Flight 447. The cabin lights were dimmed for the overnight flight from Chicago to Seattle. Outside the small windows, city lights faded into darkness as Flight 447 climbed steadily. The Boeing 737 was nearly full with 147 passengers, most of them business travelers and families returning home after the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. In Seat 8A, Sophia Lee adjusted her window shade and pulled her small blanket up to her chin. She had chosen the window seat because it was quieter and she could lean against the wall to sleep. To anyone looking at her, she seemed like just another tired traveler, a young woman in her early 30s, maybe a business consultant or a teacher heading home. The flight attendants had noticed her during boarding. She was polite but quiet, declining a pre-flight drink and simply asking for a pillow. Her movements were calm and confident, but nothing about her appearance suggested she was anything other than a regular passenger. As the plane reached its cruising altitude, the flight attendants started their quiet service. When they reached row 8, they paused to look at Sophia's peaceful form. "She's been out since we took off," whispered Jessica Chin, the senior flight attendant. "Poor thing must have had a really long day." They were careful not to disturb her as they served the other passengers in her row. The businessman in 8B, a middle-aged man in a suit, was working on his laptop. He glanced at Sophia and shook his head sympathetically. "Some people can sleep anywhere," he murmured. "I wish I had that ability." What no one on the plane knew was the truth about Sophia Lee. Hidden beneath her ordinary passenger facade was a secret that would soon prove vital. Sophia was a seasoned commercial airline pilot with over 8,000 flight hours. She held the highest level of pilot certification and was current on the Boeing 737 they were flying.
Before we dive in, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button because I'm sure you don't want to miss another amazing story.
Her career had started in the United States Air Force, where she flew transport aircraft in challenging conditions around the world. Her military experience taught her to handle emergencies with calm precision. After her military service, Sophia became a captain for a major airline, handling everything from mechanical failures to severe storms. Just last month, she had safely landed a plane after an engine failure on takeoff. This week had been particularly demanding, even for Sophia. She had just finished her annual training, which included 3 days of intensive simulator sessions. The training was mentally and physically exhausting, designed to prepare pilots for every possible emergency. The final day had been brutal, with instructors throwing every problem imaginable at her, but she had passed with flying colors. After the training, Sophia was looking forward to a few days off. She had booked this flight as a passenger because she wanted to decompress. She chose not to identify herself to the flight crew, a common decision for off-duty pilots who just want to travel without being asked for minor help. She had deliberately removed all signs of her profession. Her uniform was at her hotel, her pilot's license was in her wallet, and her crew badge was at home. She was just another anonymous passenger, which was exactly what she wanted. Up in the cockpit, Captain Daniel Clark and First Officer Emily Davis were conducting their own quiet routines. Captain Clark, a 22-year veteran, was feeling unusually tired. At 54, he had been flying for more than 2 decades, but recently, he had been experiencing occasional chest discomfort. He had mentioned it to his wife but was reluctant to see a doctor for fear of losing his flying license. First Officer Davis, at 29 years old, was focused on her duties but felt uneasy about the weather ahead. The report showed a rapidly intensifying storm system developing between Chicago and Seattle. As Flight 447 flew through the peaceful night sky, none of the 149 people aboard could have predicted how dramatically their situation was about to change. The combination of Captain Clark's deteriorating health, the approaching severe weather, and Sophia's hidden expertise would soon create a scenario that would test everyone's courage. Captain Daniel Clark suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest. He gripped the controls, trying to steady himself as sweat broke out on his forehead. "Jim, you okay?" Emily asked when she saw him struggling. I think I'm having a heart attack," he gasped, his left arm going numb. "I need you to take control of the aircraft." The words sent a chill through the cockpit. Emily immediately took control, her hands steady on the controls despite the rush of adrenaline. Her training kicked in, and she began the procedures for a pilot who becomes unable to perform their duties. "Captain Clark is incapacitated," Emily announced into her headset, alerting Seattle Center Air Traffic Control. "We have a medical emergency in the cockpit and are requesting immediate clearance to the nearest airport." "Flight 447, Seattle Center copies your emergency," the controller replied. "What is the nature of the emergency?" "Pilot unable to continue due to a suspected heart event," Emily said, maintaining her composure. "First officer assuming command. Requesting vectors to Seattle and paramedic assistance upon arrival." But even as Emily handled this immediate crisis, she became aware of a second, equally serious problem. The weather radar showed a massive storm directly in their path. A solid wall of red and yellow, indicating severe turbulence and dangerous conditions. The storms had intensified much faster than predicted. Emily realized she was facing the most challenging situation of her flying career. She was now the sole pilot, responsible for 147 passengers, and she had to navigate a severe storm that would test her limited experience. In the cabin, the passengers remained unaware. Sophia continued to sleep peacefully. The businessman in 8B was dozing, and the rest of the passengers were either asleep or quietly reading. No one knew that their lives were about to depend on the quick thinking of their flight crew. Senior Flight Attendant Jessica Chen received the emergency call from the cockpit and understood the gravity of the situation. She quietly alerted her colleagues, using hand signals to avoid alarming the passengers. They began preparing for a difficult approach, securing loose items, and reviewing emergency procedures. "How bad is it up there?" Jessica asked Emily through the intercom. "Captain Clark is unconscious," Emily replied, her voice tense. "I'm flying alone into a severe storm. I could really use someone with more experience." Jessica nodded, understanding what Emily was asking. She knew that off-duty pilots sometimes traveled as passengers and could provide valuable assistance. It was a long shot, but worth trying. She knew the announcement might cause anxiety, but the benefits of finding a qualified pilot far outweighed the risk. Jessica returned to the cabin, picked up the intercom, and took a deep breath. She knew her next words would change the mood on Flight 447 forever. Ophia was in the middle of a peaceful dream when the intercom crackled to life. Even in sleep, her pilot's instincts remained alert. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your senior flight attendant speaking," Jessica's voice said. It was calm, but Sophia's trained ear detected the underlying tension. "We have encountered a medical emergency in the cockpit, and our captain is unable to continue his duties. Our first officer is safely operating the aircraft, but we are also facing challenging weather conditions." Sophia's eyes snapped open instantly. Medical emergency in the cockpit was exactly the kind of announcement that triggered her professional instincts.